Welcome back to another segment of Behind the Scenes of the Waltons. Today I'm going to be talking about episode 17 from season 8, The Prodigals. It was written by Robert Pirosh and directed by Stan Lathan. Our two storylines in this episode, one revolves around Jeffrey, who keeps getting into trouble, and John has read him the riot act, and Rose has told Jeffrey that if he doesn't shape up, that John may ask them to leave, or they may need to move on because Rose will feel that she can't continue to be there if Jeffrey is causing trouble. The other subplot or plot revolves around Ben, who is really wanting to enlist. He is really feeling the pressure of being a young man of fighting age, and so many men are going off and enlisting and going to war, and he feels like he needs to be doing that, and that nobody understands that what he's doing is essential war work in working in the mill. And of course, he doesn't have a sign that says that. So people keep looking at him like, oh, aren't you lucky? Or what's wrong with you? Or are you a coward? And so Ben's really struggling with that. Ben talks with Jason about it, and Jason says, just keep doing what you're doing. It's important, and that's why you were given a deferment. Ben even talks with John about it, and he feels that although John has said that he did not have anything to do with the draft board, he excused himself from anything to do with Ben, but Ben still feels that the draft board gave Ben the deferment because of John. So it's not helping him, these different opinions that other people say. And of course, Cindy wants him to stay home. She's just about to, she just has this new baby and she wants Ben there. She wants them to raise this child together. And Ben feels like he wants to be off fighting the war to make the world safe for his daughter. So no easy answers there. Jeffrey has ruined a drill of John's, and so he is supposed to earn the money to get it fixed, or he wants to do that. He comes across Josh on the road, who is supposed to be helping Verdi to deliver laundry and ironing and stuff like that. So Jeffrey's with him. They go to Ike's, and there are soldiers out there gambling, rolling dice, and so Josh says he understands this, and so they decide they're going to place a bet because Jeffrey feels like if he could make some money, he could get John's drill fixed, and then they won't have to move away. Well, Ike comes out. Verdi sees them for starters, and of course she says, I don't ever want to see you doing this again. And they say, oh, we were just watching. And Verdi leaves, and then the boys return to the game, and Ike comes out and shuts it all down and takes all of the money and says he will consider it a donation to the food, the chicken dinners for the soldiers on Sunday nights. So now Josh and Jeffrey are stuck with a dilemma because he's lost the money he did have, and he doesn't have that back, and Ike has put it someplace inside the store. So Josh sort of suggests that perhaps they come back after hours just to retrieve the money that belongs to them. And that evening, Verdi comes to see Rose and John because Josh has not returned home. And so she's wondering if he is with Jeffrey. But John said, I just checked on him. Or Rose says, I just checked on him and he was fast asleep. Well, Jeffrey was pretending to be fast asleep, and once he feels like Rose has done her last check-in, he heads on out to meet up with Josh, and they do indeed decide that they're going to get into Godsy's store, that there's like a window open on the side, and so they climb in. Ike and Corbeth are out, but while they're there trying to open this bag of coins so that Jeffrey can get his coins back, Ike and Corbeth return, and they're going to go to bed, but then Corbeth says, I want to check the till. And so then they are basically caught, and they bump into them and they escape. And Corbeth thinks she sees Josh running away. John and Verdi get word that Josh is being held at the sheriff's office because Ike and Corbeth said that Corbeth saw Josh running away, and the sheriff had then come across Josh, who just said he was out. So John goes with Verdi to the sheriff's office. Now, this is once again not Ep Bridges, John Crawford. This is the deputy who also played the sheriff in the episode The Violated. And he doesn't have the same sensibilities as Ep Bridges did, and in fact is on the prejudice side in various different ways. And at one point he says that he would be willing to release Josh to John's custody because John is known in the community as, an upstanding citizen. And basically they say, well, so is Verdi. She's been there a long time and same thing. But you see the sheriff kind of quibbling about it. He says, well, I'll release him to John. And she's like, no, I want you to release him to me. And John backs up Verdi. And so ultimately the sheriff does release Josh to Verdi. Jeffrey has the money bag and he's afraid of what's going on. Josh has not mentioned Jeffrey. Josh took all the blame for it. And so Jeffrey decides to bury the money for now so that he theoretically doesn't get caught and maybe can figure out a way to give it back. He buries it by the firewood stack, and we see that Jim Bob, on a rare occasion, is out there cutting lumber. We didn't see Jim Bob in the mill very often, but in this case, David is indeed working that saw blade at the old mill and cutting firewood. Josh apologizes to Ike and Corbeth and says that he dropped the money bag. He doesn't know where it is, and that he's going to make up for the cost of that. So ultimately, it is decided that Josh will paint Godsey's store. Jeffrey comes along and wants to help him, but basically is told, no, Josh did it and Josh has to do the work. Josh wants Jeffrey to go and get the money and return it. So Jeffrey he goes back and he's going to get the money, but there's a whole new batch of firewood that is now on top of where Jeffrey had buried the money. Serena has been learning Bible verses and she's reciting some to Jeffrey, and one of them really hits a nerve with Jeffrey, and he feels very guilty and he's afraid of consequences. And so he decides to run away rather than being the reason why they have to leave the Walton house. Along the road, he comes across Verdi, and ultimately he confesses to Verdi that he was involved in this. And then he has to go home and he has to confess to Rose and John as well. And then he goes to show John where the money was buried and where all this firewood is now. So John decides that it will be fitting if Jeffrey moves all that firewood and delivers the firewood, as a good portion of that is owed to Ike. So Jeffrey begins to start shuttling baskets of firewood to Ike to repay the trouble that he has caused. I love this scene where Mary Ellen is fixing a lamp. Someone else is supposed to be doing it, but they're not there. I think Ben was supposed to be doing it, and Ben's nowhere to be seen. So Mary Ellen's trying to fix it. And I love that for Mary Ellen, because she was so competent, but she is struggling for some reason getting this lamp to work. So fun scene for me. Ben has gone to visit John Boy at the hospital where he is recovering and has a conversation with him about the same thing, that he feels he wants to enlist. And John Boy sort of runs down a sequence of the guilt that different men experience. If they're not at war, they feel guilty because they're not there. If they're in the war, but they're not on the front line, they feel guilty. If they're on the front line and their buddy gets killed, but they don't, they feel guilty. So John Boy's just trying to put it in perspective for Ben, but it doesn't really work. And ultimately, Ben comes home and announces that he has joined the CBs. And so he'll be doing virtually the same thing, but within the Army. By the end of the episode, Jeffrey and Josh have agreed that they're going to team up to deliver this wood and finish paying off this debt that they owe. And we also then see Ben, who is getting ready to ship off to the CBs. He's with Cindy, and he's now in uniform, and he goes by a number of other CBs in uniform, and is just, you can see that he now feels comfortable and confident being able to talk with them because he feels like now he's sort of part of the club, and he feels good about himself. And Cindy is proud of him and is just going to back him up. She said, she's just been afraid of it and trying to pretend the war isn't happening, and that somehow with Ben joining up, it just brings it all so close and brings it home. And so she's just struggling with that, but she believes that together they'll work through it. This scene with Ben and Cindy right at the end was on kind of Western Street, right by where the sheriff's office was. And this area was used at different times. Just you'd go around a corner and it would look a little different, or you'd be across the street and it would look a little different, and you went a little further along and you were at where another set was, or where the church was, or so it was a very useful area. And depending on which way the camera shot, it could look like a different little part of town. I also noted that Eric did not get a haircut at the end of the episode when he signed up. So, and I've heard that a number of times from you viewers saying that none of the boys had military haircuts. And it caught my attention this time because I thought, oh, he signed up, he's in uniform, and he did not get a haircut. In this episode, besides all of our main Walton family, we of course had Ike and Corabeth and Rose and Cindy and Jeffrey and Serena and Lynn Hamilton again as Ferdy. This was one of her 17 episodes or so. And now we're also into the 16 episodes that Robert Whiteman did as John Boy. And he was also in one of the reunion movies. As far as additional guest stars, at this point, James Bond III is playing Josh. He was Josh in this episode, The Prodigals, and also in the episode The Festival when he played the trumpets. Besides the Waltons, he was also in episodes of Love Boat, Vegas, Wonder Woman, and he is the founder and CEO of Solid Rock Pictures and Underground Railroad Company, a music and video company in Colorado Springs. Also, in this episode, as I mentioned, the sheriff was once more Macon McCalman playing the deputy, and he was also the deputy in The Violated. He has 97 TV credits to his resume and 15 film credits, so did a lot of work. And then also, Chris Mulkey was the dice roller when the soldiers were rolling dice. And he is an award-winning American actor, writer, and director. And he has a long and diverse career in film, television, and stage. He's best known for On the Basis of Sex, Whiplash, Captain Phillips, Twin Peaks, Castle Rock, Broken Trail, Any Day Now, and Boardwalk Empire. He's also a songwriter with original songs featured in films and television. And then our other actor is the two GIs that Jason and Ben come across right at the beginning of the episode. Ron Thompson is the first GI, and Christopher Metis was the private. He's the one that spoke. Thank you so much for joining me for this segment of Behind the Scenes of the Waltons about the Season 8 episode, The Prodigals. If you enjoy these segments, please do hit like and subscribe. I will be back with more episodes, more of your questions in another Ask Judy, and more special guests. Thanks for watching.